Good morning. On this first Sunday of Advent, we welcome all who are worshiping in person or online to this time of worship. We are led in the lighting of our Advent candle by John and Lori Beals as we wait upon the Lord.
Being that I am a teacher, I realize visuals are helpful, so as we move throughout this story, some images will appear on the screen, so thank you to the tech team for that. A question I am asked quite often is, how did you end up in Ohio? For those of you that don't know, I grew up in Longview, Washington, so being asked, how did you end up in Ohio, is a natural question for people to ask. My senior year of high school, I had a pretty good football season. College football was something that never crossed my mind growing up. Obviously, I am not the athletic specimen you see on your TVs on Saturdays or Sundays. My ability to succeed on the field came through my knowledge of the game. However, with my lack of natural abilities, we will call them, an athletic scholarship was never going to be in the cards. All this being said, my family and I had figured we would get my highlight video out to some smaller schools and see what happened, but we didn't expect any results. As a kid from a working-class family, the lack of financial stability was going to be a major deterrent when trying to attend college. I had been told by my older siblings, student loans will weigh you down, being away from home is intimidating, and quitting school early will leave you with unnecessary debt. These pieces of advice were not meant to in a negative fashion, but words from family members who had been there and done that. Simply, they were looking out for their little brother. In the meantime, I applied to several in-state universities. However, the fear of student loans and leaving home was something that scared me. Like any high school boy, I wasn't willing to share that feeling. I also applied to the community college in Longview called Lower Columbia College, known in town as LCC, or Last Chance College, due to pretty much anyone being accepted there. In my heart of hearts, I thought this is where I was going to end up, not because I couldn't handle the rigors of a tougher college, but because I was scared to branch out and take a risk. Fast forward to May of my senior year, and we just lost our district playoff game for baseball. I went home that night and said to my dad, well, I'm no longer an athlete. After being my coach in youth sports for quite some time and witnessing the high school career I put together, this sentence did not sit well with my dad. Excuse me. We conversed about numerous things that night, mainly reminiscing about the past, but nothing that would have prepared me for the journey I have been sent on that quite literally has me speaking to you at this moment. I realize most of you don't know my dad, but if at some point you do get the chance to meet him, you will realize quite quickly there are few in this world who are more determined than him. Unbeknownst to me, within the week of me stating I am no longer an athlete, my dad reached out to a little school in Northeast Ohio called Hiram College. He knew about the school because it's where his parents went and met each other, and the football team hadn't been very good for quite some time, so they might be more accepting of someone with my natural abilities. I came home from school, and my dad said, I've contacted admissions at Hiram. They are still accepting people for next school year. I sent your highlight tape to their coaches. Let's see what happens. I responded with, there's no way I'm going to Ohio. Now, Ohio wasn't totally foreign to me. I visited for a few days when I turned 10 years old to visit my grandmother who lived in the Canton area and the Football Hall of Fame. But for most of my life, I had been told by my parents why they didn't choose to live in Ohio, with key points being it's too humid, snow, and there are too many people. But sure, Trey, go ahead and leave everything you know to go experience that. God really started work in the following days. As any high school kid would do, I slept in on weekends. On this particular Saturday, I was woken up to a phone call at 6:20 a.m. I had never been woken up by my old flip phone, especially when my phone was on silent like it was that day. But for some reason, I was woken up by the flashing of the phone. On the other end was Coach Randy Moore, head football coach of Hiram College. Coach Moore said he got my highlight tape and that he wanted me to come play for him. He even stated, "I will come on a plane and get you myself." I still wasn't sold on the idea of going. I would be leaving everything I knew and the comfort of home. If I stayed with the community college plan, I had earned enough academic scholarships to have my first 2 years paid off and was likely going to be able to save enough money in my 2 years living at home. I could have my last 2 years of college paid for myself. It really came down to unknown journey in football with debt or a safe and common route. Later that Saturday, I went to the local bowling alley. This is where many middle and high school kids go to hang out and do a lot of nothing and have fun. On this night, as I looked around the bowling alley, I had what I would have described as an out-of-body experience and what I now realized was God speaking to me. I looked around and saw what looked like people who came to the bowling alley, and it was their only sense of joy. This was it. This was their life. I felt a voice tell me, "You must go." And I knew the voice wasn't talking about leaving the bowling alley, but to rather go out and take a leap with my life experiences. Longview is a city that was listed as a top 10 most beautiful city in the nation by Forbes in 2012. This was the year I graduated high school. What Forbes failed to mention is that Longview's crime rates are well above national average, and the city has addiction issues that are rampant throughout that detract from the beauty. So when I looked around the bowling alley that night, it's not that I had anything against bowlers or the people who work there, but I rather saw Longview for the city it was. This isn't bashing people that live there because I consider that home. But at that moment in my life, I knew I needed to leave. I made the decision to attend Hiram that night. Other than my call to teaching and coaching, which I can't quite pinpoint to when that officially happened, these events I just described are the first time I can truly recall God intervening in my life. By trusting God's intervention, I met faith at Hiram. I was able to play football for 4 more years. I was able to receive an education that allowed me to fulfill my call as teacher and coach. I was led to have a family of my own. And lastly, I was led to this church. This church is my first true church home. My grandfather's a minister in the Episcopal Church, and my dad was the rebellious kind of preacher's kid who left the church for a while. My dad realized church was important and that it's also important to serve others. So in elementary school, my little sister and I were pushed into being acolytes for the church. Not understanding what he was trying to do, we made a deal with our dad. We would come to church only on the Sundays where we were the acolytes, and my dad obliged. Church really felt like a job, more so than a place for spiritual growth. As an adult, I still didn't realize I needed a place to grow until I came here. In keeping with the spirit of Thanksgiving for a few more moments, I am thankful I was led to this church so I could spiritually grow. I am thankful when people smile at the running and screaming of my children, rather than scoffing at the fact that children would dare make noise in a church. I am thankful for the men's group. I am thankful for the church taking a chance on my wife to help lead you spiritually. I am thankful for the opportunity to speak to you all today. And to close, when asked the question of how did you end up in Ohio, rather than giving them this speech to be more efficient, I think I will start saying divine intervention.